So this concept that you'll learn about today has been linked with your chances of becoming highly fluent in English. If you have this psychological trait, you will become fluent in English. You will achieve your fluency goals. However, if you don't have it, you'll probably struggle. What's so crazy about this is that I'm gonna bet you've never heard about it, or even I'm gonna go as far as to say you've never even thought about it, at least not in the terms that I'm going to present now. I first learned about this 2 or 3 years ago when I was conducting a research project on a topic relating English as a second language. And so when I discovered this concept, I investigated it at that moment 2 or 3 years ago, and I had my mind completely blown. It was unlike anything I had ever heard before, and I instantly saw it as a puzzle piece that fitted really well with the rest of my own understanding of what it really takes to achieve fluency in English. Anyway, now I decided to reacquaint myself with this little known idea that comes from the field of psychology and make a video about it. So this term sounds a bit academic. Well, it actually is academic, and that is the reason why there already is a substantial amount of research made on this topic. However, it's something that until now had been kept secret. It's something that only some scholars, some intellectuals, or some select linguists knew about. Enough with the mystery. What I'm talking about is ambiguity tolerance. So, want to know what that is and how is it that as part of your psychology as a learner, it is so darn accurate in anticipating whether or not you will become a highly fluent English speaker? All right, so stay with me and you'll find out about that. We'll start off by defining the terms tolerance and ambiguity. Then we'll go over some typically considered ambiguous aspects of English when learning about vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. Then you'll find out why low ambiguity tolerance is bad and high ambiguity tolerance is good. Finally, I'll give you 4 tips to increase your ambiguity tolerance so that you can make sure to continue advancing in your English fluency journey and make sure to achieve your fluency goals. Without any further ado, let's start. Let's start by defining tolerance. If you are tolerant of something, or if you tolerate something, you accept it. Now, what's ambiguity, and when do we say that something is ambiguous? So, something that is ambiguous is unclear, confusing, or not certain, especially because it can be understood in more than one way. So, as you learn English, you're going to encounter a lot of ambiguous words, grammar, patterns, spelling even. Spelling is very ambiguous, even for native speakers. And I think the mother of all ambiguity, sounds. Anyway, let's quickly go over some of the typically considered ambiguous aspects of English. In what ways is vocabulary ambiguous? The main type of ambiguity when it comes to vocabulary is that of multiple meanings. Sometimes a lack of structure. And when I mean lack of structure, I'm specifically thinking about phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are the nightmare of most learners. I've heard from my students say that they hate phrasal verbs, and the reason why they hate it is because they are complex. They have many meanings. You can't tell what a phrasal verb means by considering the individual words. Phrasal verbs are hard because they are ambiguous, and they are unclear because they are complex. Another aspect of vocabulary that comes to mind that is also very unclear is prepositions. Even though they're not as many as phrasal verbs, in fact, they're very finite in number, there's often a lot of uncertainty as to what preposition a certain verb should take, and that causes a lot of confusion. So you get the idea. You see how vocabulary can be ambiguous, right? Now, let's move on to the other big aspect of the language, the grammar. So how is grammar ambiguous? Well, for starters, tenses are complicated. The complex use of auxiliaries that you have to implement when saying something in different tenses. Verbs have irregular forms, right? And again, you have to learn them by heart, right? And especially for people starting to learn English, irregular verbs tend to be that ambiguous aspect of the language that they struggle with in the beginning, and a lot of them just quit because they just can't wrap their head around irregular verbs. And of course, not just that, but also the other aspects of the language, of the grammar, that are a bit challenging at the starting level. So I mentioned auxiliaries, but you also have modal verbs that also function as auxiliaries. You have gerunds, infinitives. Grammar can be challenging and confusing. So that is definitely a point of ambiguity for a lot of people that causes a lot of confusion. And going back to the dichotomy between irregular verbs and regular verbs, well, you tend to think that, okay, regular verbs are hard because they don't have a pattern. However, regular verbs are hard in the sense that that ed termination, that suffix, is pronounced in one of three ways: as a t sound, as in walked, or as a d sound in learned, or as a syllable id in wanted, right? Well, and understandably, what a lot of people do is simplify that confusion, and they'll just say id for every single ed termination. So they'll say walk it, learn it, and want it. English is not easy to read, so take the sequence of letters O, U, G, H, and you'll see how different it sounds, that sequence sounds in different words. For example, you have the word tough, though, thought, through, right? So these sequence sounds different in each of these words. I actually made a video about that, which I'll link here in the card and down in the comments below. It's in Spanish, but I think that if you don't speak Spanish, you can still watch it and learn it, because I speak English there, of course. By the way, the best solution to increase clarity and reduce this confusion and this uncertainty and ambiguity of English pronunciation is IPA. Let me know if you'd like me to create a lesson on the International Phonetic Alphabet, and I'll do it. So all these difficult things about English is what makes it a learning endeavor particularly filled with ambiguity. And here's the thing: how you deal with this ambiguity is what determines the degree to which you're going to be able to master the English language. I'll even go as far as to say anything that you're learning, not just English, any skill or theoretical thing that you're learning, I think this is it. Ambiguity tolerance, picture it as a spectrum. If most of the time you're here, then your tolerance for ambiguity is low. Consequently, you tend to procrastinate, resist learning, and your progress stagnates. I'm assuming that if you're still watching this video, it's because you can understand me, and so you're not a beginner. Your tolerance for ambiguity is at least moderate. If you understand 90% of my speech, that means that you're at least a B1 level. And I don't know what the statistics are, but I'm going to guess that only 1 out of 10,000 people that start learning English make it to the B1 level. I could be exaggerating, I don't know, I'm gonna go with that number, but in any case, let me know down in the comments, venture your guess. Anyway, my point is that most people that start learning English don't really get too far because this ambiguity gets too uncomfortable for them to bear, and so they drop like a hot potato. Some of them continue learning, but the times when they do that are so few and far between that they forget what they've learned at a higher rate than the rate at which they learn new things. But hey, before we blame them, just keep in mind that that's just life. Just think about some other time where you wanted to learn some new skill or maybe something theoretical that you started to learn, wanted to learn, put in some effort, however you ended up giving up. Why did you stop trying? I think that it was because you ran out of patience before you started to make some progress. That's just how it went for those 9,999 people that stopped learning English. However, because you knew what you wanted and why you wanted it, you made it. You made it to the B1 level, at least to that level, and you figured it out. You made it. You succeeded. But hey, there's still some way to go. Are you completely happy with your current level of fluency? Your ambiguity tolerance still at play as regards the things that you still need to master, that you haven't mastered yet. You probably get the idea of what moderate and high ambiguity tolerance are by means of my description of what low ambiguity tolerance looks like. Here's the spectrum again. When you're here most of the time, you can cultivate and keep a mindset that is more susceptible to learning. And by the way, this idea of ambiguity tolerance fits pretty well with another metaphor that I guess you're more familiar with, the comfort zone. Here's the comfort zone and here's the stretch zone. In my opinion, having moderate ambiguity tolerance allows you to spend time in the stretch zone and make progress. High ambiguity tolerance is the same, only you can go a bit further and stay in the stretch zone for longer. Because what it normally happens is not that we go out of our comfort zone and never come back again. I don't think that happens. I think we go out of our comfort zone, we spend some time in the stretch zone, stretching ourselves, we make the sacrifice, we put in the effort, but then we come back. But we come back better than how we went out of the comfort zone. And our comfort zone later expands to what it used to be, the stretch zone. And that's how it works. That's how we make growth happen. Now, visit the panic zone at your own risk. In my opinion, the panic zone is a situation that you put yourself in or find yourself in that is just so uncomfortable that you retrace. You take a step back and you remove yourself from that situation because it was too uncomfortable. So you say to yourself, I'm not ready for this. But never be definite about it. Say, I'm not ready for this yet. I've seen this happen to a lot of people who were just starting to learn English and then they went to an English-speaking country, and so because that was too much for them to handle, they couldn't really communicate in English in those situations. It was a bit of a panic zone because they couldn't just do much with it. Their English wasn't functional. They couldn't really communicate. And so what ends up happening is that they start hanging out with friends that speak the same language as them, right? And so they disconnect with that opportunity to speak English in real life, in a real authentic environment where English is spoken. But anyway, as I said, as you allow yourself to spend some time in the stretch zone, eventually what it used to be your panic zone is now your stretch zone, and what it used to be your stretch zone is now your comfort zone. That's how you grow, and that's how you transform yourself. Now in this section of the video, I'm going to give you 4 tips to becoming more tolerant of ambiguity in your English fluency journey. After I give you those tips, I'm going to share something that I have low ambiguity tolerance for. I consider myself a good learner and I practice where I preach. However, there is one thing about communicating in English every day that I do that I just don't enjoy. Even when I try, I just don't seem to make progress. So let's go over the tips, and after that, I'll share that with you. Tip number 1 is reflect on your desire. Do you really want to speak your best English? Think about why you want to learn English and reflect on how connected you are to that purpose. If you really want it and you know why you want it, then you're a motivated learner. If you're motivated, you're committed. If you're committed, you take on challenges and you're more willing to take on risks. If you're not motivated, then your commitment is fragile. Your confidence is low and you're too concerned about what other people think about you. You break in the face of adversity. This adversity is that feeling of not being good enough and not being able to handle those more difficult aspects of English. So you just quit or avoid it, and then you go on learning maybe with a gap in your knowledge. So again, really want it and know why you want it. Then the how will take care of itself. Tip number 2 is avoid negative language. So moments ago I said that you might find yourself in a situation when you might say, I'm not ready for this. And then I emphasized on the importance of the word yet. Right? Because when you say yet, that's a powerful word in that sentence. When you say yet, you are saying that, okay, you're not there yet, but eventually you will. Instead, say things like, I can do it if I try hard enough, or I can do it if I learn from my mistakes. The limit between saying and thinking is a bit blurry, but I do agree with the saying that reads, the man who thinks he can and the man who thinks he can't, both are right. Keep calm. That's tip number 3. I think that patience is the antidote to frustration. So for example, you're facing ambiguity when you can't wrap your head around some phrasal verb. Say the phrasal verb give up. It has multiple meanings. It is a bit obscure because you can't really deduct the meaning by looking at the individual words that make up the phrasal verb. You might know what give up means in the sentences, we spent half an hour looking for the keys but eventually gave up and went home. She gave up smoking. But then when you see it used in different ways, as in the sentences, the criminal gave himself up to the police. I would always give my seat up to an elderly person on the bus. When that happens, when you get these different meanings, you might get frustrated. Well, do not get frustrated. I know it can be easier said than done, but remember, because you have that positive self-talk, you say, I'm not fully grasping this yet, and you're confident that you will eventually. As a committed learner with high tolerance of ambiguity, you're going to feel frustrated less often than a learner with low ambiguity tolerance. Either way, when you do feel frustrated over some ambiguity or some unclear aspect of the language, don't panic. Practice some patience. Eventually, if you have good habits in place, the thing that you can understand will reveal itself. If you have good immersion in the language, meaning you're exposed to it daily in a meaningful way, you're going to eventually be able to put the puzzle together. Tip number 4, take action, figure it out. Keep calm, be patient, but don't be indifferent. If you have a strong desire to learn English, this won't probably be a problem. You won't probably be indifferent. However, if you being indifferent to things that are too challenging is a constant issue, then I'll say that you should go back to tip number 1. Reflect on your purpose, reflect on your desire, and that is going to lead to a proactive attitude, an attitude that is just the opposite of being indifferent to the things that you can't understand. But if you're talking about something specific that you don't understand and you realize it is important, I would say this: figure it out. I love that phrase, figure it out. Everything is figurable, especially nowadays. If you have a connection to the internet, which is pretty evident you do, nowadays nothing is not figurable. No excuse can resist a connection to the internet nowadays. So follow the first 3 tips and master that aspect of the language that gives you trouble. Don't just learn the basics, master it. You can take your time, patience, but be clear on your objective, on what you want to achieve, on your goal. You have to make the effort, go through the pain today, and your future self will thank you. So now I'll share with you the thing that I have low tolerance for, low ambiguity tolerance for. It has to do with writing. Now, I consider myself a good writer. However, I think I'm kind of weak at one specific type of writing, and that is emails. I've always been aware of that, so it's something that I've been a bit indifferent to, so I need to take action and figure it out. Just find a way in which I can figure out the way to write it, how to set the right tone, the tone of formality or not so formal, a little bit informal, choose the right words and everything. It's just something that I need to figure out and of course get more practice on. Thank you for watching this video. I hope that you've learned something new today. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Let me be your guide that is going to help you express yourself in English fluently and confidently so that you're ready to advance in your career and life. I'm pleased to accompany you in your English fluency journey. Now, watch this other video that YouTube is recommending to you because it thinks that out of all my videos, this is the one that makes the most sense for you to watch next. So, is YouTube right in saying that this is your best next watch on my channel? Okay, there's just one way to find out. I'll see you there.